The wolf should have died before sunrise. Buried beneath a wall of snow, its white fur was already stiff with ice, and every breath came so faintly that Elara had to press her fingers against its chest just to feel the trembling movement beneath the ribs. She knew what the creature was. A royal wolf. And in the northern kingdoms, touching one without permission could mean death. But Elara had never learned how to walk away from something that was dying. So she dropped her lantern into the snow, tore off her own cloak, and crawled beneath the falling branches to free the enormous animal. She did not know that the wolf belonged to the most feared ruler in the north. She did not know that its disappearance had sent the Lycan King searching through the mountains for 3 days. And she certainly did not know that by sunrise, armed riders would surround her little cabin. At the center of them stood King Kaelen. His golden eyes moved from the dying wolf to the woman holding it. Then, to the shock of every soldier behind him, the king slowly lowered himself to one knee. Because the wolf had chosen her. And somewhere beneath the ancient royal temple, something older than the kingdom itself had already awakened. Winter came early to Frostmere that year. By the first week of the cold season, the mountain paths had disappeared beneath white drifts, the village roofs carried heavy caps of snow, and smoke rose from chimneys almost constantly as families crowded around their fireplaces. Frostmere was small enough that everyone knew everyone else's footsteps. There were no grand stone towers. No royal banners. No paved roads leading toward distant kingdoms. Only a narrow valley surrounded by dark pine forests and mountains whose peaks disappeared into the clouds. It was the kind of place where survival depended on knowing the land. And few people knew it better than Elara. At 28, she had spent nearly her entire life walking those forests. Her grandmother had taught her which roots could stop bleeding, which leaves could bring down a fever, and which flowers only looked harmless. Elara had learned to listen to the forest too. The crack of a branch could mean a deer. 3 quick taps against a tree could mean falling ice. A sudden silence among the birds could mean something dangerous was nearby. That evening, however, the forest was silent for a different reason. Snow was coming. Elara stood outside her small wooden cabin with a basket of dried herbs hanging from one arm. The first flakes landed against her dark hair. She looked toward the mountain pass. The sky had turned the color of iron. Her grandmother, Mara, watched from the doorway. "You should come inside." Elara tightened her scarf. "Old Thomas hasn't returned." Mara frowned. "He knows the mountain." "He does. But he also has a bad knee, and the storm is coming faster than usual." Another gust swept through the trees. Snow raced across the ground like smoke. Mara reached for her arm. "Elara." The concern in her voice made Elara pause. But only for a moment. "I'll find him." She took the lantern. Then she disappeared into the trees. Within 20 minutes, the village was gone behind her. The storm swallowed everything. Snow struck her face hard enough to sting. The lantern flame bent sideways in the wind, and she shielded it with one hand while gripping the walking staff in the other. "Thomas." Her voice vanished almost immediately. She searched beside the old trail. Nothing. She followed a line of footprints. Then the wind erased them. Elara stopped. For a moment, there was only the sound of her own breathing. Then she heard it. A scratching sound. Very faint. She turned toward the trees. Again. Scratch. 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 Elara raised the lantern. A fallen pine lay across a shallow ravine. Snow had buried most of its branches. She moved closer. Then she saw the paw. Huge. White. Motionless. Her breath caught. No. She dropped to her knees. The wolf was trapped beneath the tree. It was enormous, far larger than any wild wolf Elara had ever seen. Its coat was almost completely white, except for streaks of blood darkening the fur around its shoulder and front leg. A black mark surrounded its paw. Not a natural marking. A ring. Like burned ink beneath the skin. Elara reached toward it. The wolf opened one eye. Gold. Not amber. Not brown. Gold. Its lips pulled back weakly. A warning. Elara froze. "I know." Her voice trembled. "You don't trust me." The wolf's breathing became rougher. Elara looked at the fallen tree. then at the animal, then at the sky. The storm was getting worse. If she left it, it would be dead within minutes. She could feel the cold entering her fingers. Still, she placed the lantern beside her. Then she crawled beneath the branches. The wolf growled. Elara ignored it. She pushed Snow away with bare hands. The branches had pinned the animal's leg beneath a heavy section of trunk. She tried lifting it. Nothing. She tried again. Her boots slipped. Her shoulder slammed into the snow. The wolf growled louder. I'm trying to help you. Another attempt. The branch moved. Only slightly. Elara dug her fingers into the snow, braced both feet against a stone, and pushed with everything she had. The trunk shifted. The wolf pulled its leg free. Elara nearly collapsed. The animal tried to stand. Its front legs folded. It fell into the snow. No, no. She grabbed the thick fur around its neck. Stay with me. The wolf's body was burning with fever despite the freezing air. Elara looked toward the village. Too far. She would never carry the wolf all the way. But there was an abandoned hunting cabin nearby. She remembered it. 1/2 mile east. Maybe less. Elara removed her cloak. She wrapped it around the animal's body. Then she slipped one arm beneath its chest and the other beneath its hindquarters. The wolf was impossibly heavy. She took one step. Then another. Snow climbed past her knees. Her breathing became ragged. Her legs shook. Several times she fell. Several times she got back up. The wolf remained strangely still. Its head rested against her shoulder. And beneath the storm, Elara could feel its heartbeat. Slow. Weak. Still alive. That was enough. She kept walking. By the time the little cabin appeared between the trees, her hands were bleeding. She dragged the wolf inside. Closed the door. Dropped the wooden bar into place. Then she collapsed beside it. For several seconds, neither moved. Outside, the blizzard screamed. Inside, Elara heard only two things. Her own heartbeat. And the faint breathing of the creature she had refused to leave behind. She did not know whose wolf she had saved. She did not know why Silver had been driven into its flesh. And she did not know that far away, beneath the same storm, a king had suddenly stopped his horse because something inside his chest had told him his oldest companion was still alive. The wolf grew weaker during the night. Elara knew it the moment she touched its forehead. Too hot. The silver wound had spread dark lines beneath the skin. Poison. She had seen something similar once before. Not in an animal. In a man who had been attacked by silver hunters. The poison moved slowly through the blood, burning from the inside. Elara opened her medicine pouch. 2 small bottles remained. She poured one into a wooden cup, mixed it with warm water, and held it near the wolf's mouth. The animal did not move. Please. Nothing. Elara sat beside it. She stroked the fur above its eyes. You don't have to trust me. The wolf's breathing shook. But you have to drink. Its golden eye opened. For a long moment, it stared at her. Then its tongue touched the medicine. Elara nearly smiled. That's it. She gave it another drop. Then another. Outside, the storm grew violent. The cabin roof groaned. Snow struck the windows like handfuls of stones. Elara built the fire higher. She removed her soaked dress and wrapped herself in the remaining blanket. There was only one blanket. She gave most of it to the wolf. Her teeth began to chatter. The wolf noticed. Its head lifted. Elara looked at it. You need it more than I do. The animal stared at her. Then, slowly, it moved closer. Its enormous body pressed against her side. Warmth spread through her. Elara rested her head against its fur. For the first time that night, her eyes closed. She dreamed of her mother. Of a woman with silver hair standing beside a frozen river. Of a voice telling her to keep the pendant close. Then something cold touched her hand. Elara woke. The wolf was staring at the pendant around her neck. The small silver pendant had been given to her when she was a child. Her mother had never explained where it came from. Now it was glowing faintly. Not bright. Just enough to make the metal look warm beneath the firelight. Elara touched it. The wolf lowered its head. The pendant grew warmer. She pulled her hand away. The glow vanished. Her heart began to pound. What are you? The wolf looked toward the window. Then came the sound. Horses. Elara stood. The storm was too strong for ordinary travelers. She moved toward the window. At first she saw nothing. Then a shadow crossed the snow. Another. Then another. Torches appeared through the white darkness. Dozens of them. Elara's stomach tightened. She turned toward the wolf. The animal was trying to stand. No. She rushed to it. Stay down. But the wolf's ears had already turned toward the door. Outside, horses stopped. Boots hit the ground. Metal struck metal. Someone shouted, "Search every cabin." Elara's blood went cold. The soldiers were looking for the wolf. She understood now. This was not a wild animal. This was something important. The door opened. A man stepped inside. He wore black armor covered in snow. Behind him stood 6 soldiers. The man looked at Elara. Then at the wolf. His face went pale. By the old gods. More footsteps approached. The soldiers moved aside. A tall man entered. He wore no crown. He did not need one. The room seemed to become smaller around him. Kaelen. The Lycan King. His dark hair was wet with snow, his shoulders broad beneath a black cloak, and his face carried the exhaustion of someone who had not slept in days. But it was his eyes Elara noticed. Golden. The same impossible gold as the wolf's. Kaelen looked at Auron. For one terrible second, the king seemed unable to breathe. Then he crossed the room. Auron. The wolf lifted its head. Kaelen knelt. He touched its neck. Auron closed his eyes. Relief moved across the king's face. Then Kaelen looked at Elara. Blood stained her hands. Her hair was tangled. Her clothes were torn. Her feet were wrapped in strips of cloth because her boots had broken during the rescue. Kaelen's expression hardened. Who are you? Elara swallowed. Elara. Where did you find him? Under a fallen pine. Kaelen looked at the soldiers. One of them whispered, Your Majesty, the wound. I see it. Kaelen's fingers tightened around Auron's fur. Then he noticed the blanket, the fire, the medicine, and finally, Elara's bleeding hands. You stayed with him. Elara looked toward the wolf. Someone had to. Kaelen stared at her. No one spoke. Then Auron moved. Slowly, painfully, he rose. The soldiers stepped back. The wolf crossed the small cabin. Elara expected it to go to Kaelen. Instead, Auron lowered his enormous head against her chest. Kaelen's eyes changed. Something ancient moved through him. He stood very still. And for the first time in years, the Lycan King felt something he had almost forgotten. Fear. Not for himself. For what this woman meant. The journey to the capital began at dawn. Elara had no choice. She could not leave Auron. And Kaelen would not leave Auron behind. So she rode in the royal carriage while the wounded wolf traveled beside her beneath heavy blankets. The mountains slowly disappeared behind them. By afternoon, Frostmere was gone from sight. Elara looked through the carriage window. She wondered whether her grandmother was safe. She wondered whether she would ever return. Then Kaelen spoke from across the carriage. Why did you save him? Elara looked at him. Because he was dying. You knew he could be dangerous. Yes. You knew nothing about him. No. Then why? Elara looked down at her hands. Because being afraid of something doesn't make its life worth less. Kaelen said nothing, but his gaze remained on her for the rest of the journey. 3 days later, the black walls of the royal capital rose from the valley. Thousands of people gathered outside the gates. Trumpets sounded. Soldiers bowed. Banners moved in the cold wind. Elara stepped from the carriage. Then the temple bells rang. Once. Twice. A third time. Everyone turned. High above the city, the ancient moonstone inside the royal temple began to glow. Kaelen stopped walking. The crowd fell silent. The stone had not awakened in more than a century. Then a beam of silver light crossed the courtyard. It touched Elara. Her pendant burned against her chest. Kaelen stared at her. And the moonstone revealed the truth that would change the kingdom forever. She was not a prisoner. She was his fated Lunar. The news spread through the capital before sunset. The king had found his Lunar. But instead of celebration, fear filled the palace. The royal council gathered that same night. Elara stood outside the great chamber, listening through the carved wooden doors. Voices rose inside. She heard her own name. Then words like human, outsider, danger, weakness. She closed her eyes. She had spent her entire life believing kindness was enough. Now she was learning that kingdoms did not always reward kindness. Sometimes they feared it. The chamber doors opened. Kaelen stepped out. His expression was unreadable. Elara looked at him. What happens now? He studied her face. I don't know. It was the first honest answer anyone had given her. Inside the chamber, Lord Varrek watched them. He was older than Kaelen, with silver beginning to show in his beard and a calm voice that rarely rose above a whisper. For 20 years, he had stood beside the throne. He had advised Kaelen after his parents died. He had helped him survive wars. He had been the man Kaelen trusted when everyone else disappeared. And Varrek hated Elara. Not because she was weak. Because she was dangerous. He knew the old law. The true Lunar did not merely become the king's mate. She gained access to the Moonstone. And the Moonstone had been hiding the truth about Varrek for years. If Elara accepted Kaelen's bond, the ancient power would eventually expose every secret Varrek had buried. So he smiled. And waited. The next morning, Elara was brought into the royal gardens. Kaelen was there. Auron lay beneath a cedar tree, still recovering. The king approached Elara slowly. I owe you a debt. Elara shook her head. You owe me nothing. You saved his life. He would have done the same for you. Kaelen looked at Auron. Auron's ears twitched. For the first time, the king almost smiled. Then the smile disappeared. I cannot promise you an easy life. I didn't ask for one. You may never be accepted. Elara looked toward the palace. I already know. Something softened in his expression. But before he could say more, Auron suddenly lifted his head. His ears pointed toward the corridor. Then he stood. Elara followed his gaze. A servant was walking away. Auron growled. The servant froze. Kaelen's hand moved toward his sword. The servant dropped a tray. Silver knives scattered across the stones. The palace guards seized him. But the man was not the real threat. That night, Auron disappeared. Elara woke to scratching outside her chamber. She opened the door. No wolf. Only a single drop of blood on the floor. She followed it. Down a staircase. Through a narrow corridor. Into an unused wing of the palace. There she found Auron lying behind a stone pillar. His breathing was shallow. Silver poison had entered his blood again. Elara knelt. Someone had injected him. She saw the tiny wound. Then she noticed something else. A black cloth caught on the stone. The same black fabric used by the royal guards. Elara's stomach turned. Someone inside the palace had attacked him. She stood. Footsteps sounded behind her. She turned. Kaelen stood in the doorway. His face was pale. Elara rushed toward him. Someone poisoned Auron. Kaelen looked at the wolf. Then at her. Before he could answer, another guard ran into the corridor. Your Majesty. Kaelen turned. The king's chambers have been searched. Elara's heart sank. What was taken? The guard looked at her. Nothing. A pause. Something was left. The soldiers found the object beneath Elara's bed. A small silver vial. Its contents matched the poison in Auron's wound. The palace erupted. By midnight, Elara was accused of attempting to kill the king. She stood in the center of the throne room while guards surrounded her. Kaelen stood above her. His eyes were no longer warm. Varrek stepped forward. She arrived with the wolf. His voice was calm. She carried silver medicine. Elara looked at Kaelen. That medicine was used to save him. Varrek shook his head. And now your wolf is poisoned again. Silence filled the hall. Kaelen stared at Elara. For a moment she saw doubt in his eyes. It hurt more than the accusation. Then the king looked away. Take her below the palace. Elara's heart broke quietly. Not because she was imprisoned. Because she had believed he might trust her. As the guards took her away, Auron struggled to rise. His claws scraped against the stone. And far above them, in the darkest chamber of the palace, Lord Varrek finally smiled. Because the first part of his plan had worked. The prison beneath the palace had been built before the kingdom had a name. Its walls were carved directly into the mountain. Water ran through narrow channels beneath the floor. Cold air moved through the stone like breath. Elara sat alone in a small cell. For 2 days, no one came. She listened to footsteps above. Orders. Shouting. War preparations. The Shadowfang kingdom had begun moving troops toward the northern border. Every hour, the kingdom grew more frightened. And every hour, Varrek grew more powerful. Elara kept thinking about Kaelen. About his face when he first found Auron. About the way his voice had softened when he spoke of the wolf. About the moment the Moonstone had chosen her. And about the look in his eyes when the silver vial had been found. She pressed her fingers against her pendant. It was cold. Then she heard a key turn. An old man entered. His back was bent. His hair was white. He carried a lantern. Elara recognized him. He had been standing behind Kaelen on the day she arrived. Who are you? The old man closed the door. My name is Edrin. He looked toward the corridor. Then lowered his voice. I served the king's mother. Elara stood. Why are you here? Because she once told me that if the Moonstone ever awakened again, I was to protect the woman it chose. Elara stared at him. What does that mean? Edrin handed her a small key. It means the woman who saved the wolf must survive long enough to save the king. The words struck her like a blow. Edrin unlocked the cell. They moved through hidden tunnels beneath the palace. Behind a wall of roots, Edrin revealed an ancient chamber. Old books filled the shelves. Stone tablets covered the floor. At the center stood a cracked wooden chest. Inside was a record written by Kaelen's ancestors. Elara read slowly. The first Lunar had not been born into royalty. She had been a healer. A woman who had saved a dying wolf during a winter storm. The same pattern had repeated generations later. The Moonstone did not choose the strongest. It chose the one who could protect life when fear demanded cruelty. Elara's hands trembled. Then why did the royal family lose its power? Edrin looked toward the darkness. Because the king stopped trusting the bond. He opened another record. A name appeared again and again. Varrek's family. The old advisor had been manipulating the throne for generations. He had helped kings reject their true Lunars. He had weakened the royal bloodline. And now he wanted the Moonstone for himself. Edrin's voice became quiet. If Kaelen accepts you fully, the Moonstone will expose him. Expose what? Everything. A sound echoed through the tunnel. Metal. Boots. Edrin's face changed. They found us. They ran. But before reaching the exit, the palace shook. An explosion tore through the upper halls. Edrin grabbed Elara's arm. Frostmere. Her blood went cold. Varrek knew exactly what would force her to act. He had attacked her village. Elara ran toward the surface. She reached the courtyard at dawn. Smoke covered the northern horizon. Kaelen stood at the center of the palace grounds, surrounded by soldiers. His eyes were different. Dark. Almost black. Varrek stood behind him. A strange shadow moved beneath the king's skin. Forbidden magic. Elara stopped. Kaelen looked at her. For one heartbeat, something familiar returned to his eyes. Then the darkness swallowed it. Varrek raised his hand. Your Majesty, he whispered. Kaelen stepped forward. His claws emerged. Elara realized the truth. Varrek was no longer trying to steal the throne. He was trying to turn the king himself into a weapon. and the only person who could reach him was the woman the kingdom had condemned. The city was burning at the edges. Snow fell through smoke. People fled the northern streets as soldiers rushed toward the gates. The Shadowfang army had arrived. But Elara barely noticed. She could see only Kaelen. He stood beneath the palace tower, surrounded by guards. His breathing was heavy. His shoulders were tense. Dark veins moved along his neck. Varrek had bound his mind with forbidden magic. Elara stepped forward. Kaelen. The king's head lifted. For a moment, his golden eyes returned. Then the darkness came back. A soldier raised his weapon. Edrin moved in front of Elara. Do not. Varrek laughed softly. You still believe kindness can save him? Elara looked at him. She understood something then. Varrek expected her to fight. He expected fear. He expected anger. He expected her to attack the king. Instead, Elara lowered her hands. I won't hurt him. Varrek's smile faded. Kaelen lunged. Edrin pulled Elara aside. The king's claws struck stone. The impact cracked the courtyard floor. Elara ran. Not away. Toward him. She remembered Auron beneath the tree. The wolf had been dangerous. Wounded. Terrified. And she had not asked what it could do. She had only asked what it needed. Elara stopped in front of Kaelen. His claws hovered inches from her chest. His breathing shook. Kaelen. His jaw tightened. A low growl escaped him. Elara stepped closer. You don't have to fight me. His eyes flickered. You don't have to trust everyone. Another step. But you can trust me. Kaelen's hand trembled. Varrek shouted. Kill her. The king's claws moved. Elara closed her eyes. Then Auron appeared. He came from the palace stairs, bleeding but alive. He crossed the courtyard and placed himself between Elara and Kaelen. The king froze. Auron looked at him. Not with fear. With recognition. Something inside Kaelen broke. His breathing became ragged. The darkness pulled harder. Varrek lifted both hands. The shadows around Kaelen thickened. Remember what she did. The king screamed. The sound shook the courtyard. Elara ran to him. She placed both hands against his chest. His heart was pounding beneath her palms. You saved Auron. Kaelen's eyes burned. You saved me. A tear moved down Elara's cheek. And now I'm going to save you. The pendant around her neck grew warm. The moonstone beneath the palace answered. A silver light rose through the stone floor. Varrek staggered. No. The light grew brighter. Ancient markings appeared across the courtyard. The royal bloodline. The first Lunar. The broken oaths. Every secret. Every betrayal. Every poisoned king. Every murdered bondmate. The moonstone revealed them all. The soldiers watched in horror as Varrek's name appeared among the ancient records. He had murdered Kaelen's father. He had arranged the king's mother's death. He had poisoned Auron. He had attacked Frostmere. He had spent years weakening Kaelen so he could control the throne. The evidence was undeniable. Varrek ran. Auron blocked him. The old advisor stumbled backward. Kaelen stepped forward. The darkness cracked. Golden light burst through his eyes. Varrek raised his hands. The moonstone rejected him. The force threw him across the courtyard. He struck the stone steps and collapsed. The kingdom had finally seen the truth. But Kaelen was still changing. The forbidden magic was breaking. Elara held him tighter. Stay with me. His claws slowly disappeared. The dark veins faded. His body shook. Then he fell against her. For several seconds, Elara could hear nothing but his breathing. She closed her eyes. He was alive. Auron lowered his head beside them. The storm grew stronger. Snow covered the courtyard. But beneath the falling white, something beautiful had begun. The king was free. Varrek was defeated. Yet the final choice still remained. Because the moonstone had chosen Elara. But Kaelen had to choose her himself. The battle ended before sunrise. Shadowfang soldiers surrendered when they saw their commander fall. The people of the capital slowly returned to the streets. Smoke disappeared into the winter sky. And inside the royal temple, Kaelen stood before the Moonstone. Elara waited several steps away. The ancient stone glowed softly. No chains. No guards. No council. No prophecy forcing either of them. Only choice. Kaelen turned. For the first time since she had met him, he looked like a man instead of a king. Tired. Scarred. Human beneath all the power. He walked toward her. I thought being king meant I had to carry everything alone. Elara said nothing. I was wrong. He stopped in front of her. You saved Auron when you believed he might kill you. His eyes moved to the white wolf lying near the temple entrance. You saved my kingdom when everyone believed you were destroying it. He looked back at her. And when I failed to trust you, you still came back for me. Elara's eyes filled with tears. I couldn't leave you there. Kaelen reached for her hand. This time, she did not pull away. The moment their fingers touched, the moonstone brightened. A soft silver light filled the temple. The bond awakened completely. Not like chains. Not like a command. Like warmth. Like coming home after years spent walking through snow. Kaelen lowered his forehead against hers. I choose you. The words were simple. But they carried the weight of everything that had happened. Elara closed her eyes. And I choose you. The moonstone released a final wave of light. Outside, the wolves of the royal pack began to howl. One voice. Then another. Then dozens. The sound rolled across the mountains. The people gathered outside the temple. For the first time in generations, the royal wolves were welcoming a Lunar. Not a princess. Not a noblewoman. A healer from Frostmere. A woman who had owned nothing but a small cabin, a few herbs, and a silver pendant. A woman who had crawled into a blizzard because she could not leave a dying creature behind. Months passed. The kingdom changed. The old council was rebuilt. The secret laws were opened to the people. Villages along the northern mountains received protection from the royal pack. And Frostmere became the first village under direct royal protection. Elara returned there often. Her grandmother cried when she saw her. Not because Elara had become Lunar. Because she had come home. Children followed Auron through the village streets. The great white wolf no longer limped. His coat had grown thick and bright again. Sometimes he slept outside Elara's cabin. Sometimes he disappeared into the forest for hours. But every evening, he returned. One spring morning, Elara stood on the hill above Frostmere. Snow still covered the highest mountains. Wildflowers had begun appearing between the stones. Kaelen walked toward her. He wore no crown. Only a dark coat and the silver emblem of the royal pack. Auron followed behind him. Elara smiled. Kaelen stopped beside her. Do you ever think about that night? She looked toward the forest. Every day. Do you regret saving him? Elara looked at Auron. The wolf lifted his head. His golden eyes met hers. She smiled. Not for a second. Kaelen took her hand. Below them, Frostmere glowed beneath the morning sun. Smoke rose gently from chimneys. Children laughed near the river. Wolves moved between the trees. For years, Kaelen had believed his greatest duty was protecting the throne. Now he understood something different. A kingdom was not its walls. It was not its crown. It was not even its king. A kingdom was every frightened child sleeping safely through the night. Every traveler who could cross the mountain without fear. Every old woman who could gather herbs without wondering whether soldiers would come. Every creature that could be wounded and still find someone willing to kneel in the snow beside it. Elara had taught him that. And the wolf had led him to her. Years later, people would tell the story differently. Some would say the Moonstone had chosen the Lunar. Others would say the royal wolf had recognized her soul. Some would claim the storm itself had been sent by the old gods. But Elara knew the truth. There had been no prophecy when she found Auron beneath that fallen tree. No royal guards. No golden crown. No promise of power. There had only been a dying wolf. A terrible storm. And one choice. She could have walked away. She could have protected herself. She could have told herself that someone else would come. Instead, she had wrapped her own cloak around a creature that could not repay her. That single act of kindness had changed the fate of a king. It had exposed a traitor. It had healed a broken kingdom. And it had brought two lonely souls together beneath the same winter sky. As evening settled over Frostmere, Auron came to Elara's side. She knelt and buried her fingers in his thick white fur. He leaned against her shoulder. Kaelen watched them with a quiet smile. The same king who had once gone 7 years without knowing how to smile now smiled whenever he saw the woman who had saved his wolf. The first snow of the next winter began falling. One soft flake landed on Elara's hand. Then another. She looked toward the mountains. For a moment, she remembered that first night. The darkness. The cold. The blood in the snow. The impossible decision to keep walking. Then she looked at the warm lights of Frostmere below. At the wolf beside her. At the king standing behind her. And she understood that sometimes fate did not arrive like thunder. Sometimes it came quietly. Sometimes it was buried beneath the snow. Sometimes it opened one golden eye. And sometimes the greatest love in the world began with a simple choice to save a life when no one was watching. Elara had entered the blizzard as an ordinary village healer. She had walked out of it as a Lunar. But the crown was never what made her worthy. The kingdom had not fallen in love with her because she was powerful. The Moonstone had not chosen her because she was born special. Kaelen had not loved her because fate commanded him to. She became powerful because, when fear gave her every reason to turn away, she chose compassion. And that was the lesson the kingdom remembered long after the storm had melted from the mountains. The strongest heart was not the one that could conquer. It was the one that could remain gentle in a world that had taught it to be afraid. Above Frostmere, the wolves began to howl. One voice rose from the forest. Then another answered. Then another. And beneath the silver moon, Elara stood between the king and the wolf who had changed their lives forever. For the first time, she was not afraid of the storm. Because she finally knew something the storm could never take away. She had found her home.